all governments around the world are struggling with how to tax this sector. And they don't understand the sector. And one of the things that we effectively did was engage with government to explain at least what the Canadians are doing.
Hey folks, Flo here with Blockchain North. We're here at the Digital ABC, or Digital Asset Business Council's very first crypto policy forum in Ottawa. Very important, of course, that we be here. I'm here with David Robertson of EY. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Great. Cool. I got that one right. So you just got off your panel, and as I understand, one of the main things you talked about was this plan by the federal government to clarify, so to say, the tax treatment for all crypto asset mining activities for GST purposes. That's a mouthful. Can you explain that in maybe a minute or less?
The challenge that the government was having was that if you think of what mining was taking place back in 2015, 2016, people had computers in their garages and they were earning Bitcoin, and the government was trying to figure out how to tax that. And their solution to it was to simply say, well, we don't know how to tax it, so we're just going to take it outside of the tax system. When you sell your Bitcoin, you don't have to charge and collect any tax. But at the same time, you can't register and you can't claim back the tax on your costs, the GST you paid or the HST.
The input costs.
Your input costs. And so what they did is they came up with this solution that very much focused on the industry in 2015 or 16. And they brought it in February of 2022. When the industry had diversified and substantially changed.
Right.
And we had the rise of the mining pools and the international mining pools. Canada was very much just providing computing power that it was selling as a commodity. And as a consequence, you ended up with this, in terms of clarifying the legislation, what the government was attempting to do was say, well, we don't know how to tax it, so we're just going to pull it out of the system. It's sort of a very blunt force approach to it.
So what does that do to the competitiveness of the space? And as I understand, it's also sort of isolated to the crypto industry. No other industry in Canada is facing this kind of treatment.
I have never seen this was brought into a particular section of the Act known as the special rules, and I've never seen this happen before. What that effectively did is that if you were a Canadian, if you were a Canadian with a data center and you were selling your hash rate internationally, it meant that as of February 5th, 2022, your costs went up by the cost of the GST.
Can you give us a sense of what that
it went up in Alberta.
Dollar terms?
Yeah, in dollar terms. So that's the cost of your equipment, the cost of the computers, the cost of all of the build-out, the equipment, the electricity.
About the energy inputs.
And the biggest one was the energy input. So it instantly took your cost from, if it was 4 cents a megawatt and you were in Quebec, it went to 4.6 cents a megawatt. So it was a significant cost increase overnight by a proposed government policy, which wasn't anticipated by the sector at all.
And so where are we at with that proposal or that plan right now?
Well, the legislation, thanks to the efforts of the Digital Asset Business Council, or fundamentally the coalition that formed that now is transformed into the Digital Asset Business Council, is there was an effective engagement with the Department of Finance, with the Canada Revenue Agency, with government, with MPs and policymakers, in order to move away or at least clarify their clarification. And where we've ended up now is, based on recent guidance that's been given by the CRA, I can at least turn and say for Canadians who are selling their hash rate, who are producing the hash rate in Canada and selling it to an international mining pool, as long as you're selling roll pay per share, or pay per share, you're going to get all your input tax credits back. And provided your pool is one of the non-resident pools, I'm not aware of any Canadian pools operators.
Okay.
You don't have to charge any tax. There's no tax associated with the sale. And with respect to your inputs, you should be able to get the GST, HST back on your inputs.
Okay.
Where the uncertainty lies is all the other forms of payment. So PPLNS and the rest. Fundamentally, the right answer is that everyone should be getting their tax credits back. As I explained in the panel, the purpose of Canada's GST was to take sales tax off of inputs so that we could take low-value goods, energy, electricity, turn it into value-added goods, hash rate, sell that internationally and compete internationally with the lowest cost possible, bring that wealth back into Canada, and then the companies would be taxed through the income tax system on the wealth that's been created in Canada, which is good for all Canadians. That's the right tax policy. We still have some steps to get there.
Is there a country in the world that has a model you think would work in Canada?
Well, the interesting part is when we spoke to Canada now, thanks to the fact that the government took this leap, all governments around the world are struggling with how to tax this sector.
Mm-hmm.
And they don't understand the sector. And one of the things that we effectively did was engage with government to explain at least what the Canadians are doing. So when we talked to the Department of Finance initially, they said, well, we looked to what they're doing in Britain and Germany.
Okay.
Well, those are high energy cost jurisdictions. We don't compete with them. We compete with the Norways and the Paraguays and those countries where energy costs are very low. And so they were using comparisons where they said, well, they're doing this as well, so we're doing the right thing. It wasn't the right thing for Canada. So now, thanks to what's happened here in Canada and from discussions with officials at CRA, now other areas now other countries are looking to Canada to figure out now how do we apply or should we follow Canada's tax policy. So Canada, much like being at the forefront of producers of hash rate and the technology which, as has come out at the conference, this is currently focused on, proof of work blockchains like Bitcoin. But the next step is the data centers for AI. And Canada is so well positioned if we get it right, as opposed to what we've seen so far, which is government really acting counter to what we need in Canada for this particular sector.
Fascinating, and I really look forward to the next steps.
Yes.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Pleasure speaking with you.
Pleasure.